I am been speaking to a lot of people that have been listening to our, watching our sessions on Facebook each day at 2 o'clock, and I guess taking that feedback on board, which has been quite positive. What we are going to do is just do very short, sharp, 15-minute presentations that you can watch in its entirety, rather than doing large-scale, full half-hour and 1 hour training sessions. So hopefully it's something that can be of some benefit to at least give you a taste of a concept, and you can look into it further with more detail if need be. So today we're going to talk about bird laser technology as perhaps an alternative to using physical devices or other scare devices. So certainly from what we've found, using lasers, I guess we're seeing lasers being used in a lot of different areas. So we're going to show you some of those areas in which we and our clients, in the world of professional pest management have been playing with. Just really quickly, essentially the laser that I have here is essentially what we call a mounted laser. And there's a difference between the two types of lasers that are used in the Australian marketplace. There are handheld sort of torch type lasers, and technically without a weapons permit, you really can only use a laser that's 1 nanowatt or less, and that's not very powerful because of impacts of aviation and vehicles and so on. You can just sort of see that you are unable to use lasers that are handheld of any reasonable strength, particularly for bird control, just purely for human safety and so on. So this unit is what we call a mounted laser. It's fully programmable. I'll get to that in a moment, and it's mounted, within a facility, and you can run it through a pre-programmed approach. Okay, so essentially, what you'll find from the deterring process, it'll just reduce the fouling or the bird mess or the issue associated with birds, suited for outdoor applications, indoor applications, and also horticultural applications. Just touching on the legislative side of things, it is illegal for some of the handheld units coming into Australia. These mounted units can be actually quite powerful. So this particular one is an 80 nanowatt unit, and then we have 2 agricultural style units in it. They look the same, but they're 250 nanowatts and 500 nanowatts. And just because of the safety implications, I wouldn't have those running and sitting right next to me. I've got this program, so it's actually not going to be flashing on my face during our presentation. But the interesting thing is, the higher the power, the more chance of impacts of laser radiation, essentially. Again, that is why they're programmable, and that's why we use them for specific situations. So there is our process, and essentially what we do is we have a simple keypad where we can key in about 16 different movement patterns and so on when you're setting up your system. So essentially, great for commercial, industrial, agricultural and horticultural situations. Birds are truly frightened. I mean, we've seen some birds far more so than others, but some of the birds in indoor environments have been really difficult to control. Sparrows, particularly in shopping centres and so on, been really useful and really sensitive to laser technology. Ducks in outdoor environments, commercial pools. Now that pools are all closed for the winter, outdoor pools are a great environment to actually remove ducks using laser technology. Essentially that intense spot, and while if you're in the room right now you'd see this spot just flipping around the room, but also if you use it at night time, that from here to the spot is actually linked like a lightsaber, Star Wars style. So the very first time I used it outdoors, it actually went outside across the rail network over an oval, and then I could see it, the spot on trees half a kilometre away, and it was quite intense, like really intense. And the idea is that each system just comes with a programming pad, which you then detach and keep, and then you just go back probably a regular basis just to maintain the correct program in place. Alright, so that's essentially the unit there. We have a power on button and also the laser on, and then we've just introduced a new isolation switch, which can be actually mounted further down the wall, because often you'll have these units mounted quite high. And then you would just sit down, and this unit here is powering away on a program I just did earlier. I can just stop that. I can turn the laser off. I can turn the laser back on. I can have it run through a whole range of preset patterns, or also I can override. So essentially, by touching the joystick, I can now move the unit upwards out of the way, and then I can actually then start to program it, and I just watch, and then I can essentially program it by, say, doing my first run might be across a beam, and I'll scan that, then press, and then continue to just run through a sequence in order to create essentially a preset. So of course, then I would just press run, and it would just essentially continue on, which is what it's going to do right now. But when you're doing beam structured type buildings, it can be a really lower cost and reduced labour intensity in comparison to bird netting. Now, admittedly, it's probably not as thorough when you talk about an exclusion system, but as opposed to a $50,000 to $100,000 project, it might be very useful to have 2 or 3 lasers coming from different angles. And when you find that you have the lasers coming from different angles, it really accentuates the fright to the birds, because they'll be looking in a number of different ways, and it will clear birds out. So it's really useful in that regards. Also, as we've discussed, a lot of intense pigeon and seagull applications when you've got flat roofs. Now, it's important that the unit doesn't shine off the roof for safety with vehicles and so on, but essentially a mounted laser could be mounted to such it could scan an entire roof like this, and again to have perhaps units inside all 4 corners. This is a huge area. This particular roof is about 10,000 square metres. So the idea is having that over an area, particularly with seagull nesting commencing in April in Victoria, can be useful. The interesting thing is you would also need the more powerful unit than this one. This one is great for indoor applications, but for outdoor applications it's really only suitable for night roosts. You'd really need to go to the agricultural heavy duty unit. We've also seen them used in waste disposal areas, both indoor transfer areas and outdoor areas, for some level of bird deterrence. This is probably the most extreme situation you'll find in any aspect of bird control. And in the agricultural or horticultural sector, again, these are only to be used as, say, an alternative to netting, when basically netting becomes unaffordable, and realistically it can only be used as a support mechanism, but certainly will have some value. And then in this case, this unit's mounted in a stadium. There'll be a whole bunch of structural situations that'll have some value. Alright, I guess the principle of deterring birds is really just an intense light or intense nature laser beam. Birds perceive it as quite a strong threat. So it's a lot of movement, it's a very intense spot and beam. And I guess it does appeal to the sensitive survival nature of birds. And the fact that it's continuous, it really never stops. Once it's in a night roost, and particularly if it's coming from a couple of different locations, if you've got more than one mounted, that really takes the fright to a whole nother angle. The other aspect of it where it's been of use is in portable environments. So the idea is just mounted on a tripod in roof or warehousing areas, or out on sporting fields or on golf courses. Again, used during dusk or early mornings for cockatoos that are damaging greens or whatever, but it's got some value in a portable sense. So essentially, it's a really easy to program process. So if you're into gaming, I guess the simple joystick and preset and saving is an easy process. But for us older generation, is still pretty useful. Safe to use around humans if you follow the directions. There's no issue with this unit operating close to me, but if it's actually shining in people's eyes, that's significant. We've had instances, and I know myself when I've been out, say on a rooftop where Josh has been programming it, and it's actually got me, and that's the agricultural unit where you'll be blinking that spot for days. It's something that you've really got to be seriously careful about laser radiation and your site and that of your customers. But safe for the birds, safe for the environment, but it's a great deterrent system when used correctly. Water resistant, so this package here is IP65 rated, and we have it, probably can't see it, but have it in a couple of different strengths. Essentially we import the two models, the Scan 80, which is this unit, and then we have a Scan 500, which looks the same, just a more intense spot inside the unit. We also run them from solar panels with a deployable timer system. And the interesting thing about the timer system and the power needed by these units, it's really important that you don't tend to run them off solar 24 hours a day. You tend to run them for a specific purpose at a designated time. But certainly we've run them from solar panels when it comes to portable environments. Great for use in outdoor areas, the portable use. So yeah, just to finish up, short and sharp. These units, bird laser programs are quite a viable option. They're far more intense when it comes to bird frightening than sound systems or other visual deterrents. And it should be noted there are different types of laser systems out there. There are some systems that will throw a lot of different patterns up onto a wall. Great during the dark of night, but not ideal during the day. Some of the commercially available lasers are about 6 to 7 nanowatts. Now, to put it in comparison, this one here is our indoor unit. It's an 80 nanowatt unit. So I guess, it's 12 times more powerful than some of these more pattern type units that are more suited to an inside nightclub than for bird deterrence. And then of course once you go to the agricultural style, which is 500 nanowatts, well, they're almost 100 times more powerful with that single spot than the patterns. So it's really important that it's the pattern, the beam, and the intensity is what's deterring the birds. But easy to program, viable for a wide variety of species. We've used them, or our clients have reported great success on a whole variety of different birds. Ducks particularly, cockatoos, pigeons, sparrows, and seagulls particularly. So yeah, also suited to a lot of different situations, indoors, outdoors, agriculture, horticulture, and so on. Will it basically stop a facility, a horticultural situation, stopping them from bird netting? If it's, a lot of the soft fruits can only deter birds, particularly in large numbers, by being netted. But what this can often be is that it can actually, reduce the need of netting potentially, or can be used when, say, the drape nets are removed for different spraying when it comes to the viticulture market. They can have lasers running during that time when they remove the nets, and so on. Anyway, low labour intensity. Setting up these things can be done in minutes, and in the idea of that isolation switch, you can extend that down the wall so you don't have to actually get up high to turn the units on and off. They're also a long-term approach. These units, we actually did have some reliability issues essentially with some of these systems, and over time the manufacturers built the system far more robust. Not so much the outside of the package, but more so the electronics, and so we're really comfortable with the way that's going. And also quite cost effective. Some of the large scale projects, when you've got lasers actually keeping the birds moving at night, and essentially what it might do in a roost is just stop the birds from sleeping. So by doing that, over time you will deter the birds out. But certainly from a cost